Deep in Central Africa, there is a river that the Bakongo people have believed for over 2,000 years is not just a river. It is a doorway, a boundary line between the world of the living and the world of the dead, so precisely mapped, so deeply understood, that the Bakongo built an entire cosmology around crossing it. They called it the Kalûnga Line. And what makes this extraordinary is not the belief itself. Many ancient cultures described boundaries between life and death. What makes the Bakongo different is what they understood about it. They did not fear this doorway. They mapped it. They navigated it. They trained specialists to cross it and return. And the cosmological system they built around the Kalûnga Line, over 2,000 years before European contact, is so sophisticated that modern scholars have compared it to the most advanced spiritual philosophies in human history. This is a story that almost nobody outside Central Africa knows. The Bakongo people are one of the largest ethnic groups in Central Africa, spanning what is now the Democratic Republic of Congo, Angola, and Gabon. At the height of the Kingdom of Kongo, between the 14th and 17th centuries, this was one of the most powerful and sophisticated states in Africa, with a centralized government, a system of taxation, a diplomatic corps, and trade networks reaching across the continent. But what distinguished the Bakongo above almost any other ancient African civilization was their cosmology, their understanding of the universe and humanity's place within it. They divided existence into two worlds, separated by a single sacred boundary. The upper world, called Kunck, was the world of the living. The lower world, called Kumpemba, was the world of the ancestors, the spirits, the dead. And between them, running like a river through the center of existence, was the Kalûnga Line. Every human being, in Bakongo belief, crossed this line twice. Once at birth, entering the living world. Once at death, returning to the world of the ancestors. The sun itself, in their cosmology, performed the same crossing every single day. Rising in the living world, setting through the Kalûnga, traveling through the spirit world at night, and rising again. Here is where the Bakongo cosmology becomes physically real. The Kalûnga Line was not just a spiritual concept. It had a physical form. Water, any body of water, a river, a lake, the ocean, was considered a manifestation of the Kalûnga Line in the physical world. A place where the boundary between the living and the dead became thin enough to cross. The Congo River, one of the deepest and most powerful rivers on earth, was the primary Kalûnga in Bakongo belief. Its surface was the doorway. Below it was not river bottom. Below it was the spirit world, Kumpemba, exactly mirroring the living world above. The Bakongo believed, and this detail is extraordinary, that the spirit world below the water was not a place of punishment or darkness. It was a living, breathing world, identical to this one, where the ancestors continued to exist, continued to move, continued to watch over the living. The dead were not gone. They had simply crossed the line. And crucially, the line could be crossed in both directions. Under the right conditions, with the right knowledge, a person could reach across the Kalûnga and communicate with what was on the other side. The Bakongo did not leave the crossing of the Kalûnga to chance. They trained specialists to do it. These specialists were called Banganga, singular nona. They were healers, diviners, and mediators, trained from childhood in the knowledge of the two worlds. Their role was specific. When the living needed guidance from the ancestors, when illness struck and its spiritual cause needed to be identified, when a community faced a crisis that required wisdom beyond the living world, the nona would cross the Kalûnga. Not physically, but through ritual, through sacred objects called minkasi, through ceremony and knowledge that took years to master. The minkasi, the sacred containers used in this process, were among the most powerful objects in Bakongo culture. They were made from materials that bridged the two worlds, earth from graves, water from sacred rivers, objects belonging to the dead. Each minkasi was essentially a portable Kalûnga, a contained doorway between the living and the dead that the nona could open and close. When European missionaries arrived in the Kingdom of Kongo in the 15th century, they encountered the nona and the minkasi and called them witchcraft. They were not witchcraft. They were the product of a 2,000-year-old system of knowledge about the nature of existence that was more coherent, more internally consistent, and more carefully documented through oral tradition than almost anything the missionaries brought with them.
When the Portuguese arrived in the Kingdom of Kongo in 1483, and when the slave trade that followed dismantled the kingdom over the next 3 centuries, something else was dismantled alongside the political structures. The knowledge system. The Nana tradition was suppressed. The Minkasi were destroyed or confiscated. The oral traditions that carried the cosmology were interrupted by forced displacement, by missionary education that replaced Bakongo knowledge with European frameworks, and by the deliberate erasure of anything that could not be categorized as primitive superstition. But here's what they could not erase. The Kalûnga across the Atlantic were the enslaved Bakongo people. The cosmology survived in the Americas. In Haiti, the Vodou tradition preserves elements of the Kalûnga. In Cuba and Brazil, Palo and Candomblé carry fragments of the same two-world cosmology. The cross circle of the Congo cosmogram, the Daikna cross, has been found carved into church basement floors in the American South, drawn by enslaved people who kept the knowledge alive in secret. A cosmology that powerful, that coherent, could not be fully destroyed. It survived the Middle Passage. It survived 3 centuries of suppression. And it is only now, through the work of African scholars and historians reclaiming their own traditions, being fully understood for what it always was. One of the most sophisticated maps of existence ever created by any civilization on Earth. The Bakongo did not fear death. They mapped it. They understood the boundary between the living and the dead with a precision and a coherence that most of the ancient world never achieved. They built institutions to navigate that boundary. They trained people to cross it. And when everything around them was taken, they carried that knowledge across an ocean and kept it alive in secret in the floors of the very churches built to erase it. That is not superstition. That is one of the most remarkable intellectual traditions in human history. And it began in Central Africa, 2,000 years before most of the world's great universities existed. Now, if this story made you feel like the history you were taught left out something enormous, you are right. And I want you to watch something. On this channel, there is a video about a sunken city beneath the ocean in India, a city so ancient and so precisely built that scientists are still arguing about whether it should even be possible. The people who built it may have been doing something similar to what the Bakongo did, mapping the world in ways that modern thinking cannot fully explain. That video is on your screen right now. Watch it next, and tell me in the comments what you think connects these two stories, because I genuinely want to know. If this channel is new to you, subscribe. Turn on the notification bell. Every video on this channel is a story that was real, that happened, and that almost nobody told you. That is what Curious Files TV is for. And if the Kalûnga gave you chills, share it. Someone in your life needs to know this story exists.